Welcome back from an ad break. We will continue with our application questions under the topic recent impact of the recent legislation on the businesses. Right, the question goes as follows. Read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. Libusa Wholesalers, which is LW. Libusa Wholesalers sell grocery items in Kuruman. They employ 50 workers who are allowed to join a trade union of their choice. The management of Libusa Wholesalers resolves work-related disputes through statutory conciliation, mediation, and arbitration. So here, basically speaking of our CCMA. Right. The question says, identify the act that applies to LW or Libusa Wholesalers. Quote from the scenario to support your answer from the scenario. So meaning you take everything from the scenario. The second question says, explain other ways in which LW can comply with the act that is identified in the question above, basically. The last question says, evaluate the impact of Skills Development Act on businesses. Don't forget, by impact, we are referring to the positives and the negatives. But here it's saying evaluate the impact. Right, the first question says, identify the act that applies to LW. Quote from the scenario to support your answer. So which act, from seeing here, reading the scenario, right, I'm sure you've spotted an act that they're talking about here. They say they employ 50 workers who are allowed to join a trade union of their choice. The management of LW resolves work-related disputes through the statutory conciliation, mediation, and arbitration. I'm sure there you have spotted the act that is relevant or that can be linked to this question that we just read now. All right, you're correct. The answer is the Labor Relations Act. So let's see the motivation. They employ 50 workers who are allowed to join a trade union of their choice. Remember, this is part of what? It's part of their ways to comply as well, to say allow them or allow employees to join a trade union of their choice. So that is the quotation there. Right, the management of LW resolves work-related disputes through statutory conciliation, mediation, and arbitration. That is also another motivation from the scenario. I hope you've seen, we've taken it word for word as is, nothing was changed. Right, let's go to the second question. Right, the second question says, explain other ways in which LW can comply with the act identified in the question. How can they comply? So meaning here, you should not repeat what is stated here. You can't speak about joining the trade union of their choice, and you cannot speak about using the CCMA to resolve the work-related issues. Right, let's hear. Employees should not be unfairly dismissed. So if you're going to dismiss the employees, you need to do it in a fair manner. You can't just wake up in the morning and say you are fired without following the necessary measures or the procedures of dismissing the employees. Allow the establishment of the workplace forums. So you are complying if you're allowing the establishment of the workplace forums. Employers should not ignore any collective agreement. So we've made an agreement between an employer and employee. As an employer, you've promised the employees that you will give them 10% increment, for example, and then it was agreed upon, and then there was you've signed, and then all of a sudden you are ignoring the collective agreement. You're not giving the employees what you've promised them. So ignoring that is regarded as it's discriminatory, meaning you're not compliant, rather. Therefore, you are not compliant. But if you do as you've promised, then you are complying. So hence they say the employer should not ignore any collective agreement. Businesses must allow employees to form the trade unions. Right, let's go to the next question, which is evaluate the impact of the Skills Development Act on businesses. Right, we're going to start with here our positives. It says here, train employees to improve productivity in the workplace, promote self-employment and Black entrepreneurship. Remember, you are offering the employees skills, and the skills, they can use them, and they don't have to necessarily work for anybody, but they can start their own businesses. So with the Skills Development Act, from training the people, then they can start their own businesses, or they can venture into like entrepreneurship and become their own bosses without relying on somebody else. Right, let's go to the negatives of the Skills Development Act. It says here, skills development levy could be an extra burden to financially struggling businesses. Don't forget, with the skills development levy, as a business or as the employer, you have to pay 1% of the employer's payroll towards the skills development levy, which will go through, will go to the, SARS will be collected by SARS. So now that 1% could be an extra burden to a business that is financially struggling, right? So hence it is a disadvantage. It increases the cost as the process requires a large amount of paperwork. So that paperwork, it's costly as well. Not only costly in terms of money, but also it's also time consuming. So doing all of that is time consuming. Right, so that is the answer for the impact of the Skills Development Act. Right, let's go to the next question. Read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. We've got Capri Software Developers, which is CSD. They say here, Capri Software Developers produces computer software for various businesses. CSD employees are always motivated to work hard as the workforce is diverse. They comply with the EEA to avoid paying expensive fines. Right. The first question says, quote one positive impact of the Employment Equity Act. So when they say quote, definitely don't forget it's from the scenario. Explain other positive impacts of the Employment Equity Act. When they say other, it means other than the ones that you've stated above. All right, suggest ways in which businesses can comply with the Employment Equity Act. Right, let's get right onto it. Quoting one positive impact. Right, let's quote from the scenario. Right, it says here, CSD employees are always motivated to work hard as the workforce is diverse. Remember, if you're working with different people, people who are diverse, speaking different languages, from different races, people with disability, it motivates you as a person. It makes you feel that you are included, you are valued, then you are appreciated in the workplace. So employees are always motivated to work hard as the workforce is diverse. Right, let's go to the next question. Explain other positive impacts of the Employment Equity Act. It impacts positively on the BEE ratings for businesses. That is the other one that you can speak of. Right, the last question here says, suggest ways in which businesses can comply with the Employment Equity Act. How can we comply? How can you comply? Remember, this is a legislation, right? And with the act, we have to comply. So how can we comply to ensure that we don't have to pay any form of penalties or any fines, rather? Right, so businesses must guard against discrimination or discriminatory appointments. What does that mean? So you need to guard against like finding yourself employing people based maybe on the race, maybe because you are related to them, you're only employing the ones that you are related to, or because you are from this race and then you're also employing people from the same race as you. So you need to guard against such discriminatory appointments, but you need to give equal opportunities to everybody, regardless of their race, regardless of the language, regardless of the disability. Right, promote equal opportunities and fair treatment. We spoke about equal opportunities just now. Implement an employment equity play. So these are ways in which businesses can comply with the Employment Equity Act. There's so many more or so much more that we can speak about under the compliances, but we'll focus only on these 3 for now. Right, so we're gonna go into the quick break right now, and then when we come back, we're gonna wrap up because we've covered everything that needed to be covered for this particular lesson. So I'll see you after the break.